Hello, welcome to the show Culture Chat. My name is Dr. Marquita Byrd and my co-host is
Professor Arjun Buxi.
And we come together once a week to talk about social issues that are current in the United States with the hopes of encouraging others to have discussions in your community and to do some thinking about them so that we can come together to make them better. Today we're talking about age. And age is important because, of course, all of us have an age, and we all describe ourselves by our age. Our question that we're addressing today is age just a number? Many people want to say that, yes, it's just a number. And, of course, we don't want to bind ourselves and reduce our life potential by looking at our age. On the other hand, there are certain things that come along with age. We do want to recognize that there are advantages and disadvantages to whatever age or whatever lifespan you happen to be experiencing. For example, now that I'm over 21, not much, but I'm over 21, I look back and I think, I don't think I want to be 21 again. Some people say, gosh, if I could just go back to that. Or I don't want to be a teenager again because there are certain advantages to being my age with my knowledge base. So we want to explore age today, what it means, and how it can impact on our lives.
Absolutely. And so, folks, well, age, as you rightly put, is seen so differently by different people. And so, well, do we treat each other differently based on our age? Do you feel that, Marquita?
Oh, absolutely. Of course, we know anybody who's been a child, and it's all of us, at some point felt oppressed. Because our choices were limited because we were children. And of course, well, you haven't reached middle age, but I am. And I recognize that there are certain things that middle-aged people deal with that young people and old people don't. People do treat us differently. And so being treated differently according to our age can sometimes be advantageous. For example, like people respecting you, people being careful of you, those sorts of things. On the other hand, it can also become discriminatory when you are kept from certain rights and privileges because of your age. And we call that ageism. One of the things that I like to address when I do workshops on ageism is that ageism is discrimination against someone based on their age or lifespan that they're in, life stage, I want to say. And that discrimination then harms them in a negative way. I want to point out that not only are elderly people discriminated against, but children and youth are also discriminated against. And there are certain, beyond those kinds of protections that we try to give children because they are young and they're growing up, they can be discriminated against. For example, on the job, we know that we have a high unemployment rate in our country among our youth, which I think contributes to some antisocial behaviors. If they were working, which most of them would like to do, they wouldn't be doing those things.
And
but
if I could just
yes.
interject, I actually heard the actual numbers on this, so I thought I would share.
Okay.
Yeah, so the national is roughly 5 to 8%, depending on who you look at. For youth, it can be as high as 30%, and worse if you are a person of color.
Yes, yes. Among minority youth, it's a 50% unemployment rate. And then we wonder, why are they getting in trouble? Well, they could be if they were working. But of course, some of that has to do with the fact that in America, we are elongating childhood. We're elongating childhood so that we can keep the workforce for more mature people. So we have some problems with that. But we need to be talking about the aging process because between 2015 and 2056, upwards of 92 million Americans will be 65 years and older. That will be the largest age group in the country, and that brings certain issues and problems for us financially. We know that people are discriminated against, both young and old, with stereotypes. In the media, we see stereotypes of youth that are all crazy and out of control and they're unsafe. We have to be afraid of them. They're irresponsible. When the fact is that many teenagers and young people are working, if they can find work, and there are a surprising number of teenagers who are actually independent because of family situations and maybe even living alone. So we need to get rid of those stereotypes of the youth. On the other hand, we also have stereotypes about the elderly, and those can be limiting in themselves. We tend to see them as fragile, not thinking well, automatically moving into senility, unable to function by themselves. And that, of course, is very far from the truth for most elderly. We're talking about people 55 and older. I'm proud to say that baby boomers are changing the notion of what it means to age. And we're not falling prey to the notions that you have to become feeble and you know, are no longer sexy, you no longer have dreams. We're changing those images. And so that's very, very good, because that means that we can continue to partake of the potential of people as we age, not lose it because we start closing down.
Absolutely, and such a beautiful tapestry, and that really helps us put together a kind of definition or typology of age, if you will. So where we have, well, the actual chronological age, X number of years old, right?
Right.
And then you have mental age, how old you are in terms of your faculties and your ability to think and response and memory, those kinds of factors. Physical age, how healthy are you? What is your blood rate?
Yes.
All those other factors. And I think there's another one which I'd love you to elaborate for us. What is legal age?
Legal age, and let me just say that there's a scary test online. It says, do you want to find out what your actual age is? And so you put in all this data about your physical health, and I found out I'm 85. I'm in trouble, so. But for physical age. Right. But yes, legal age has to do with those laws that dictate what kinds of things we can and cannot do based on our age. For example, we tell people that you have to be at a certain age to get married without parental consent. You have to have a certain age to smoke, buy tobacco products. And I think there's a state that's even thinking about making it 21. You have to be a certain age to drink alcohol. Some of that is based on research data that tells us that the youth, young people's, their brains deal with alcohol a little different than others, and they, that they're not able to handle it as well. Military status, when you can go and fight in the military. And we have a little side story. A young lady who's 17 is suing the U.S. government so that she can register to fight. Because on the forms, if you say female, you're kicked out of the form. You cannot register to go into the military at 17 if you're a woman, period. Okay. So she's saying we want to be equal in all ways. But legal age is something that's of importance in our country because it dictates certain things that you can do. If you're 25, for example, and you're male, you have difficulty renting a car.
Right, absolutely. And I think it sort of intersects with this concept I deal with sometimes. I study, on a side note, I study family business structures in collectivist societies such as India. And so I would add to the part of different types of age. Legal age is the one you mentioned. I would add social age. So social age would be similar in legal age in terms of its ramifications, what you can or cannot do as a person, but instead of being legally enforced, it is socially enforced.
Oh, very good.
So for instance, one example in those family businesses, this was a huge issue, is inheritance. You could be a competent 25 to 28-year-old, let's say, person with a master's in business. You've come back and you have a family business and you're like, okay, Dad, I'm ready. And Dad says, no, you're not. Right? And so then what starts to happen is that you are always waiting on the time when you will be the person in charge. You don't get to decide that. The elders do. The social elders decide whether you are ready or not. And as I said once in a podcast, you know you're ready when you're no longer Mr. So-and-so's son, but rather he's your father. And so yes. I would say social age, what starts to happen with social age, and you could probably link that to legal age, is we start codifying it into law based on, in some cases, our orthodoxy towards religion, or how we feel about women, and that would be an example of what you stated earlier with the inability of a 17-year-old female to apply to fight wars.
You were talking about social age in a study of how women find out what it means to be a woman, and looking at teen pregnancy. In interviewing young teens, girls who become pregnant, many of them, they say they become pregnant because they want to be grown up. They know about, people always say, oh, they don't know about contraceptives, they don't know about sex. They do know, but they choose to get pregnant because then once you become pregnant, people talk to you like you're a grown-up, even if you're 12, even if you're 13. And so this, in America, we're missing some things because we don't have the ceremony. We don't have the things that tell you socially you're a grown-up in a formal way. So there, I like bringing, talking about the social one.
Absolutely. And what do you think, Marquita? Because now let's talk of it as far as how how do we stereotype people based on their age? You've given some great examples. I thought I'd share one from the business world that we stereotype the aged. Here in Silicon Valley, for example, if you're over 40, 45, 50, you cannot easily, if at all, get a job in a tech company. And so even if you have a fantastic resume, you have the abilities, and you do try and keep up, it is seen as a disadvantage and you're kept out of the workforce in the tech industry. And then on the flip side, like I said, with the family businesses, you aren't allowed to inherit your so-called birthright. And so where do we go from here? What do you think are some solutions that we can apply as a society?
Well, I think, of course, we need to recognize that people of all ages have something to offer. Just because you're young doesn't mean you don't know. And I'm having to go and apologize to my students because last week I was so frustrated with them that I said to them, "You're only 18, you don't know anything yet." When, of course, they do know a lot. They've been alive 18 years. They certainly have learned something, or they wouldn't be coming to college. But we stereotype people by saying that they don't have the knowledge base, or they may not have, we'll say they don't have the emotional capability to do certain things, when in fact they do. So we can begin to build solutions by recognizing that we need to talk to the person and find out who they are and what they're about and not assume. For example, planning in a church. Let's say you have a church who wants to move more into the community. Who goes to those meetings? Just the elders. But they want to do program for the youth. So why not bring some of the people there, young people in the church, into the planning meeting to see what do they need, what do they think, what do they want to learn, what do they want to do? So we've got to do that. And on the other hand, we have to be careful of not pushing the mature people out of the picture, because they carry with them institutional knowledge. Institutional knowledge helps you from repeating mistakes. We know what we tried and that thing didn't work for us. It might not work now. We don't want to give up institutional knowledge, and we don't want to give up what we've known in terms of developing how this organization has come forward.
Very true. And this takes us perfectly into what we discussed earlier, something called hybrid teams. And so it doesn't matter if you work for a for-profit or not-for-profit institution, or if you're a student, or simply a community member, as you mentioned, for religious purposes or otherwise. The chances that you will benefit greater if you have a variety of different ages in your team is definite. Here's how it might work. For example, what Marquita mentioned earlier, the long-term orientation versus the short-term orientation. People that are older have not only the storehouse of experience knowledge, but they also have long-term thinking. They think ahead in terms of larger increments of time. And so they're not necessarily dissuaded or put off by short-term losses or short-term challenges. This is extremely powerful.
Yes.
With younger folks being digital natives, as we like to call the millennials, have two advantages to them. Not only because they're able to tap into much greater multiplier resources through the internet to raise money, to raise awareness, to connect with people that were physically, geographically separate from them and involve them in a cause. But that's the second part. They are cause-oriented. So people that are under 30 today, millennials, they have this view on life, studies say, that we can make money and still be socially responsible, socially conscious. That's why you have terms out there now called conscious capitalism and so forth. And the idea being that we can be successful and financially secure without causing harm to others or to our planet. And I think all said and done, whether it's the long-term orientation, experience, social consciousness, and digital natives, just to take a few examples, we all stand to gain when we all are a little bit different in how much white hair we might have.
And I have to add this before we close the show, is that this very project that we're doing is benefiting greatly because of age differences. We have a 35-year difference between the hosts here. And so we bring the millennial perspective and we bring the baby boomer perspective together, and we've come up, we hope, with something fresh and new. And so we're enjoying that what do you call it, hybrid team.
Hybrid teams. Absolutely, absolutely. I didn't think of it that way. So hopefully, folks, we've thought about age. Is it just a number? Well, I'd rather say age is a number of things, and those are all wonderful things. And so, folks, thank you for joining us for another episode. Feel free to subscribe to us. We'll come right to your inbox. Comment in the section below. Like our episode. And who knows, maybe you'll even follow us on Twitter. We're at @CultureChatShow. So join us next time for another Culture Chat.